Not hearing the music though, Darwin. I don't know if it's playing.
Hello, good evening, viewers and subscribers, family and friends of the Ruseas Family Foundation. This is Darwin once again with another of our Ruseas Empowerment Hour. And I want to say it's a pleasure be bringing to you all these for these live feeds. And today we have another one of these very meaningful feeds that it is so nice that we wanted to make it so enticing. I want to add a little music to the background. That's our theme song, Young, Gifted, and Black. I tried to give it that little Jamaica theme. And by saying that, we want to talk a little bit about our guest today. We have a very special guest today, a former Ruseas stalwart as well, very quiet, strong individual who you might not have, if you went to Ruseas, you might not have heard a lot about this gentleman. He's very quiet. He does not speak a lot out loud, but he does speak with the pen a lot and with his work. And I want to invite you all to come and share this moment with us. And if you have any financial questions, please feel free to forward it to the WhatsApp group so we can also discuss further. Now, today we're talking about none other than Mr. Gregory Malcolm. This unique individual has such immense potential, such immense and global ideas of finances that I cannot describe the amount of knowledge he will depart on you viewers today. So without further ado, I want to welcome to the Ruseas Brosis Empowerment Hour, Mr. Gregory Malcolm. How are you today, Gregory?
I'm doing well, Darwin, and thanks for the well, that was quite a worthy introduction. Not sure if I'm deserving, but thanks, Emil. But before we get into it, Darwin, let me just say that you've been doing a really commendable job as a moderator for the empowerment sessions. I've had the privilege and benefit of seeing quite a few of them, either live or in taped, and I think you've got a natural knack for this moderating stuff. So, I know you and I were talking. I was asking if you had some training and background in this one, and you said you didn't. It came naturally, but yeah, I must say it's your calling, really. I mean, so fantastic job.
Thank you, Greg. I appreciate that. It's very humbling for me to be, this is my way of providing a service back to the Ruseas institution. A lot of persons might have done it by playing football, that's their service. Some persons might have done it academically, that's their service. And this I consider one way of helping to contribute as my service to this Ruseas institution. So I thank you very much for saying that. And you deserve everything I said earlier. You are deserving of that. Persons and viewers will learn as we get on further in the program. I thank you for saying that,
Thanks,
Gregory.
thanks for that.
Okay, so you want to talk a little bit about yourself. Let persons introduce yourself to the viewers so they know who we're talking
All right, good stuff. So first, let me say to the viewers, to the Ruseas Brosis family, as well as to the broader Ruseas community, that sincerely hope everyone's doing well. Tough times we're going through, and impact is wide ranging, but I do trust and hope everyone's hanging in there and coping well. So about me, so people probably know me more as the more quieter, reserved half of the brother duo of Troy Buller. So Troy's my brother, obviously. So I went to Ruseas, graduated from Ruseas in '83. So I graduated fifth form in '83, and I actually went on and did 2 years of sixth form in Jamaica before, and of course did my CXCs, A levels, and all that stuff, and was did relatively well in those studies. And then I left. When I left Ruseas, I actually went to work for one of the big four accounting firms in the island. It was, the big four firms in Jamaica, they work off the British system, right? So the chartered accountancy system, and they actually recruit in high schoolers, a few high schoolers each year, right? Their main pool of talent, they recruit from the colleges and universities. But they'll select a few high schoolers. So I was one of three high schoolers that joined this big four firm, in 85, yeah, in 85 when I left Ruseas. And of course I moved to Kingston, and was working with them for about 9 months, so going around doing varying audits of some of the local Jamaican companies and stuff. And then in 86 I left and came to the US. So this was I don't want to say a mass migration, but almost was a mass migration of the entire
Right,
family,
right,
with a few
right.
exceptions, where probably about 10 of us migrated to the US. I personally, I was enjoying the work in Jamaica. I didn't really have much of an interest in coming overseas.
Right, right.
But what happened was, when we got to the embassy and we interviewed, this included Troy as well, Bulla Troy. I'll refer to him as Troy rather than Bulla. And actually, because of his age, he was past the age where he could be sponsored by my aunt, who was the one sponsoring us here. So someone had to be left, someone had to stay behind. And
Yes.
Troy was the one, and I ultimately came here in
Wow.
86. And of course, you come to the US. In New York, it was, sort of the typical immigrant story, I guess. You sort of struggle to find your way around.
Yes.
I actually migrated with my uncle came with us, and my uncle is actually the father of Buzu. So Buzu and I are cousin. Um,
Right.
so my
Bozo, a
uncle,
lot of persons might not know who Bozo is.
yeah, Kerr. Andrew, I call it Andrew Kerr.
Okay.
I don't know if that's, I don't know what people know him as, but Buzu is a popular name I know, but Andrew is what I
He's
call him. Yeah.
he's a past the Costa Cup winner for Ruseas for
Correct.
several
Yeah.
years.
So he
So a
played the
lot of
Costa
persons will
Cup.
know it. Yes,
Yes.
yes.
Yes. So of course, and then I used to go around with my uncle. He was a cabinet maker when we got here, and help him out a bit. And then probably about 3 or 4 months later, I actually got my first gig. Of course, I was applying for jobs all over. Got my first gig, and actually, it was on the stock market, right? I was
Wow.
working with a brokerage. I got a job with a brokerage firm based on the exchange. I wasn't a broker, all right. So just to be clear, I didn't have the lofty job of being a broker, but I was one of the backroom analysts that was largely working on settling the trade. So imagine, you sort of see it on TVs. All the brokers on the exchange seems to be shouting at each other. Looks quite
Right. Oh yeah,
confusing.
it's
Well, the
crazy.
fact is they make mistakes, right? So someone may say, firm A may say, I want to buy 100 shares of stock. Firm B says, I want to sell 100 shares of stock. Instead of
Yes.
capturing firm A and firm B in the transaction, somehow one of them picks up a firm C, right?
Right.
So my
Right.
job at the end of the trading day was to ensure that I find out who the real buyers and sellers are, so we could settle the trade, right? And it was during
Yes.
those years that I really picked up an understanding of the stock market, financing, investing, and
Yes. Yes.
all that
Yes.
good stuff. And at the same time as well, I was also going to college, right? So I was studying
Yes.
studying in college, and roughly four years later, I got my bachelor's in accounting. And then as soon as I got my bachelor's in accounting, then I left the brokerage firm and went to work in public accounting. So again, doing auditing and the likes. And I ended up back with a big four firm. And I did auditing for about 6 years.
Yes.
And then I left that job and joined my current company, which is a major global multinational. People would know this company. They're a personal goods, home
Yes.
care
Yes.
company.
Wow.
global footprint. And I've been with them now for 21 years, right?
Excellent. Very good. You have
Yeah.
I mean, you could talk for 2 hours just talking about accolades and stuff that you've accomplished already. But you have the way you talk about your accomplishments. You have a very humble way of saying it and disciplined. And I'm sure that discipline didn't just start at Ruseas, because Lucy is a very small seaside town, and it's a capital town in the parish
Yeah.
of Hanover. That's where you're from. And that seaside town has a discipline among the people, and you are also a part of that discipline. You are a beneficiary of that discipline from an early age, maybe from Lucy Primary, perhaps.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're right. I mean, I was born in Lucid Town, went to Lucid Primary, and Miss Enid Gonzalez
Yes.
was the principal. I was generally a very good kid, so I didn't have to get subjected to the whip too often.
The Milo.
But there were times I showed up late and you get that spanking in your palm
Yes.
and all that stuff.
Yes. Yes.
So that discipline started there. I also must commend, I had some strong individuals around me,
Yes.
and I give a lot of praise and commendation to my brother Troy.
Yes.
I mean, at the time I didn't recognize it then, but growing up in Lucy, his friends were my friends, right? And
Yes.
and
Yes.
um and I remember, if I, there are times I'd go out and by chance I'd try to go hang out with some of the friends, and Troy was there as well, and he would actually chase me home. So he and I couldn't be in the same place at the same time, right? So I ended up spending most of my time behind the gates in my house, and that's how a lot of people tend to remember me
Yes.
when they ask who I am. They said, "Oh, that's the boy that used to be behind the gate," and part of it is just because of the discipline that I was subjected to. Troy being one of the prime disciplinarians, even though he's
Yes.
not that much older than I am, but he was a prime disciplinarian for me.
It's interesting because even growing up as a young kid, you have a lot of discipline around you, a lot of role models that you could take from. However, you had this knack for doing mathematics. You like numbers.
Yeah. Yeah, when I was very young, I wanted to be a lawyer. I actually I was quite good in the English language. When I got to Ruseas, I still maintained a good, my good grades in English, but it was about in the, I would say, third or fourth form when I came across this one of the persons I'd say is one of the great educators of our time in Lucy, his name is Desmond, Mr. Desmond Dunkley. He's
Desmond Duncan, yes.
actually Shauna's uncle, but
Yes,
he
yes.
was a math teacher, this a brilliant educator, and I'll tell you, I learned so much from that man. To this day, we stay in touch. He was the moderator at my wedding.
Yes.
So I have a great deal of respect for him. And even after he left, he's now in the U.S. And even when he left teaching and gone into separate operations. And I would
Yes.
always say
Yes.
to him that is he belongs in the classroom, because he was one of the brilliant minds, in terms of
Absolutely.
educating kids, and just leading them down the right way.
Absolutely, very good. And with all these role models around you, it propelled you. Now you're successful at common entrance. You went to overseas. You even tried to play football at some point.
Yes, yes. So listen. I'll admit that I always was into my books, but I also try to seek a balance, and I love playing sports. Right? I mean,
Yes.
I used to walk. Whether it's from the house, into the neighborhood, playing soccer, playing football. And then
Yes.
when I went to Ruseas, I actually played for the junior Colts team and the Colts team. Now, I'll say one thing, and if she's listening, my sister-in-law is Miss P. I don't know if you guys know Miss P, but Miss P is sort of the first lady of soccer in I'd probably say I'd say in Jamaica, but who knows? But for sure
Yes,
in Hanover, right? And she
yes.
was very much working alongside the coaches. And Miss P, of course, we grew up in the same neighborhood, and she'll probably be the one to say that she was the one that influenced the coaches to pick me for the teams. I'd like to say I made it on my own merits, but who knows? But yeah, it's I played Colts, played junior Colts. Some of the names I played with is Donald Hewitt on the Colts team, Corey Brevitt I played with on the Colts team, Conk,
Linton
Frogman,
Stewart, yes,
Lodi, yeah,
yes,
Linton
Lottie, yes.
Stewart, yeah, to name a few.
So
I'm
you
sure
so
there are
you
others,
had
but
you didn't get to play the Costa Cup with these guys, but you played Colts with these guys who turned out to be superstars afterwards in winning the Costa Cup over and over. Well, Lottie Samuels, he didn't get to win the
yeah,
Costa Cup, but that 1983 team where he performed in, might as well you say they win the Costa Cup anyway, because they
true,
set the stage, just stamped the mark for Ruseas at
yeah.
Jared Park with Cornwall, and the rest is history.
Mm.
However, let's dive a little deeper now into, you went to overseas, you did what you did, there was a talent acquisition, and you got migrated. So now we get to pick up where we left off. You are in stock market. You are at the top of you're starting here at the bottom. What for some persons may say you started from nothing, which is always something anyway. It
Mhm.
can't be you started from nothing. You always started from something,
Sure.
and then you ended to bigger things. So in your view, you ended, well, you were at the stock market, stock exchange. You're auditing. We see on TV all these craziness, persons trading, agents talking all kinds of confusing stuff to us. It looks like that. And you are auditing what all these persons are doing at the end of the day to ensure that everything is right. This humble young man from Lucy Hanover, talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, it was yeah, it was an eye opener. So first let me say I'm very I think it's a good point you raise in terms of it doesn't matter where you start from, right? It's we all have to recognize that there are learning experiences in all walks of life, right? It doesn't
Yes,
matter if you're in doing the best in the biggest corporation, or you're sweeping the street somewhere.
yes,
We're all key contributing members to society,
perfectly.
and we're all trying to develop and learn and grow. So so I didn't have any concept about the stock market when I left Jamaica, right? And of course, when I got here and got involved in the mix, it was a little bit intimidating, right? This was my first job in the U.S. Sort of thrown into the pit, as they would call it. That the pit is what they call the brokerage, the trading
Yes,
area where the guys are trading and just trying to sort things out. So and you have to have a certain temperament, because you'll get guys who the brokers they're going 100 miles a minute. You when the trades are done and you're trying to figure it out, and they're coming at you saying, no, you can't, this can't be right, and pushing back at you. It was quite challenging. So I think that helped me to build certain resolve, and a certain temperament to be able to relate to people in a way that despite how one may react to what you're saying, you've got to maintain a certain calmness to yourself, because you know what you're trying to achieve and what your role is. So no, it was a quite insightful experience going through that, and that sort of laid the foundation and framework for me as I continue to grow and evolve as a professional and as a human being here in the States.
yes, yes. Very good. So by you doing this function at this high level, you have had to deal with almost all the major accounting firms across the length and breadth of the globe. And this has put you in contact with a lot of other persons, professionals who talk about
Sure.
crunching numbers. I'm talking in accounting terms here now. I'm trying to learn a little bit from you.
Yeah, yeah.
So, you know, So, you have learned a lot about financing, money management and things like that. As you know, you might be aware, every person has an individual um, financial difficulty at some point. And, you probably could expand a little bit about money management, or you could go into
Yeah.
it a little bit.
Yeah, sure, sure. Let me talk a little bit about, so I talked about and I'll talk about money management in a short while, but
There you go.
I shared with you a little bit about my experience on the stock market. But the
Yes.
last 21 years I've been with this company, and again, I've been blessed. I've had the opportunity to live and work in a number of different locations,
Countries, yes.
countries. Yeah, I've lived in, I was in Puerto Rico for a couple of years. I lived in the Philippines for 3 years, lived in London for 4 years. That's where I met Byron, actually. So I
Yes.
lived in London for 4 years and in France for a year. And then I came back to the US at the end of 2015, again with the same company, back into a corporate role, leading the audit department, the internal audit department for the company. And now I'm in a different role where I'm overseeing different sort of financial services groups that are based in different parts of the world. So, so
Yes.
I've gone
Yes.
through an experience where stock market picked up some experiences there, and now in this business, I've largely been operating in finance leadership roles, in operations finance, helping the
Yes.
organization determine how best to invest
Yes.
their resources, looking at, are we getting the payback and the return for where we invest our funds, right? So that's been my
Yes.
experience. Now, in terms of, as people think about their own personal financial management, I'd say the first thing is you need to know your numbers, right? And when I say you need to know your numbers is, you need to know what is it that what is it that you're bringing in terms of income, where is it that you're spending your dollars, right? And that's the first fundamental thing is you need to know your numbers. And one of the ways to do that is you need to set goals, and you need to write down on a piece of paper, for lack of better technology, what your budget is, right? So this is what my income is, this is where I'm spending my dollars, and you look at your spending and you say, okay, of what I'm spending, what are the things that I absolutely have to spend, meaning the non-discretionary, the mandatory stuff, so rent, utilities, all that stuff. And what are the things that are discretionary? Discretionary is I go out and have a meal, right? Do I have to? No, I could cook at home and avoid spending outside. So you need to set a budget for yourself, and then track how you're doing against that budget, right? So what are the actuals that you're spending, and how does that compare against your budget? The one thing I say to folks is do not ignore the obvious, right? So people get into the trap of spending. They're spending above their means, and they're hoping and praying that something miraculous comes along and change
Will
the
turn,
dynamic,
right?
right? You've got to
Yes.
take control. You have got to take control.
Yes.
Now, I'm
Yes.
not suggesting it's easy, right? I know people are in
Yes.
circumstances where they've got to pay the bills, they're only making a certain amount and all that stuff, but this is where you
Right.
need to
Right.
carefully scrutinize what are the things that I truly could manage and control in my
Yes.
spending. You could do
Yes.
things on your income, get another job, whatever, right? The choice is there as well, but there are things in your spending as well that you could control. And the other thing I say is however small it is, save,
Yes.
right? Put
Oh,
away,
yes.
put away,
Yes.
prioritize. That's a priority you need to have for yourself, is to put away money. And when I say put away, spend your money in income producing assets, right? So people go out and say, okay, I'm going to buy a car. Listen, nothing against buying a car. We all want to drive nice, fancy cars and all that stuff, but very
Yes.
few
Yes.
cars retain their value, right? Very
Yes.
few cars retain their value. So you've got to think about, if I've got a certain amount of funds I need to prioritize, what are the things that are going to bring me value much further in the future? And those are the things you should prioritize. And then the other thing I would say to folks is you need to plan for the unexpected, right? So as COVID is a perfect time, a lot of people, are losing their jobs
Yes.
and all that stuff, right? So
Yes.
you want to think about having at least, I think that the rule of thumb they said is anywhere 3 to 6 months of basic living expenses saved up in case something goes wrong, right? So again,
Yes.
another good practice for folks to bear in mind, right? So those are some of the sort of the more basic personal financial management things I'd recommend. The other thing I'd say is know your credit standing, is another thing, right? Know what your credit score is, and what are the things driving your credit score, and how you could potentially influence an improvement in those credit scores. Because in most places, good credit, if you don't have good credit, you're sort of running uphill in
Yes.
some
But
in some in some environments.
you're absolutely right with that, especially in this side of the hemisphere of United
Mm,
States, and where the credit standard is used a lot to qualify persons for many things,
right.
loans, housing, and even for cars. Sometimes many different things they might not tell you, but the points system. But you talk about investing also. You touch a little bit on that. You
Yeah.
you want to touch on that a little bit?
Yeah. So the first thing I'd say is I talk about from a personal financial management the importance of saving, right?
Yes.
And I think then it's a question of what forms do those savings take, right? So where do you invest those savings? I'm a quite aggressive investor, and whatever I say here, folks, it's my personal opinion, right? If anyone's out there thinking about getting into the stock market or whatever, do your own research, consult with your own advisors and stuff. But these are my own personal views in terms of investing. So when you think about investing, there are varying vehicles that you could invest in. That clearly, people will save in their savings account. But we know today the interest you earn on savings in a bank is almost nothing, right? 1%, 2% at best, is what you get. So then you start to think about what are the vehicles that could get you a better return on your investment, right? So there is, of course, the equities or stocks is one of the vehicles that historically over time has performed the best, right? Have provided the best
Yes. Yes.
return on
Yes.
on investment. Of course, there are also fixed income securities, which are things such as you invest in bonds, which get you a fixed rate of return. But the overall return for those tends to be less than stocks. So stocks typically will now, you know, there's the old concept of high reward, high risk, right? So
Yes.
stocks tends to be the ones that gives you the most reward, but it also carries the highest risk in terms of loss, right? So you could, invest $100 in a company today, and it could be $1,000 in 10 years, or it could be zero
Yes.
in 10
Absolutely.
years, right? so so
Absolutely.
so it's
Absolutely.
high risk, high reward. And when you think about investing, you've got to think about your time horizon. So if someone is early in life, then I'd say you want to take a more aggressive approach to how you invest, right? So you'll probably put most of your money in the stock market to start with.
Okay.
As you get older and closer to retirement, you don't want to take those risks, right? You want to try to now preserve what you've got,
Right.
right? So you think about rebalancing things, right? As you get older, you start rebalancing, right? You start taking it out of, shifting a bit more away from the stock market and more into fixed income securities that are more less risky. It's
Yes.
more about preserving what you've earned so far, with a view to when you get to retirement, you've got those funds available to you. Because, when you're 60, you don't want to be investing in the stock market for the risk that, it's going to go
Oh
away.
yeah,
And when you're ready to retire, it's not there, right? So
that's
you want
true.
to
Yeah.
be
Yeah.
very, very cautious as you
Yes.
get
Yes.
older.
Yes.
But the things I would say, if I sort of focus on stocks, right? I think I'd seen something where they said if you invest about $20 a month,
Hmm.
for at the age of 21, if you begin to invest $20 a day, and let's say on average that earns you you get a return of 5%. By the time you get to 65, you would have built up $1 million. Now if you wait 10 years, if you wait 10 years later to start investing, so rather than, let's say, at the age of 20 you start investing at the age of 30, you're going to have to double what you need to put away
Yeah.
to get to 1 million. And of
Yes.
course that it continues to build and compound. So investing early is important. Starting early is important, and staying consistent is important, right?
Yes.
So
Discipline.
you can't try to play the stock market, think you're always going to win, right? So
Right.
so so the key is, when you're investing in the stock market, you want to be consistent. Identify a pool of funds that you're going to invest,
Yes.
and you stay consistent in terms of continual investing over time, and that will help to balance out a portfolio that's diversified. You want to look across different industries, and diversify, and hopefully it gets you to a position where, because you're diversified, your risk profile as reduced, right? Because now you're in different segments and sectors, that helps to balance that out. So, and the other
Very
thing
good.
I'd
Very
say is,
good.
invest in, when you're investing,
Hmm.
educate yourself, right? Make sure, if you
Yes.
see a company you want to invest in, you research as much as you can on that
Yes.
company. Know its products,
Yes. Yes.
know how much it makes, know how much the
Yes.
company is selling, how much is it growing.
Yes.
What are the things that the company is talking about bringing out in the future. So know as much about the company as you can before you
Yes.
you you start throwing your money out there, right?
I'm glad you mentioned that, because let's say for a person who's not so educated, a regular street person who's just living from day to day, and they say probably buy a lottery ticket and they want, say, $10,000,
Yeah.
and they want to make that money turn to, or to make some more money, and they're interested in the stock market, but they don't know how to do it without giving any insider
Yeah.
information out, which just not to get in trouble or anything.
Yeah.
We try to see if, how we can, what's the best advice we would give to someone, like, for that person like that. How could they invest that money in, maybe you mentioned about educate yourself about stock market. Some persons may not be in that capacity to
Yeah.
read and understand these languages. So, make it in a simple form. What advice would you give this person?
Yeah. So if you come into some money, and you feel that you're not in a position to make the decision on your own, in terms of the research stuff that I talked about, then that's when you reach out to a financial advisor, right? And the financial advisor could help you better, think through and articulate, based on what your goals are, help to
Yes.
devise a plan for you. Now, there's another element, where, rather than investing in individual stocks, you could invest in a consortium of stocks, right? So you've got what they call mutual funds,
Yes.
or indexed funds, which are made up
Yes.
of a multitude of companies that you could invest in those group of stocks, right? So these are typically based on industries, or a cross section of stocks, or
Okay.
could be based on companies that are operating in different markets, international companies, etc. So, there are a consortium of stocks called mutual funds or index funds that you could
Yes.
think about investing in, which then sort of takes the guesswork a little bit out of trying to pinpoint a specific company to invest in, right?
Yes. Yes.
You know,
Yes.
and you know, trading these days is quite easy. You could, you know, if you could open an online trading account for
Yes. Yes.
free, and these companies charge very low fees to trade
Yes.
trade
Yes.
stocks.
Yes.
Some of them nowadays are you know, charging no fees whatsoever, right? So
Yes. That's true.
you
Very
know, so
true. Very true.
it's a you know, there's you know, again, use Google, huh? Use Google to
Yeah. To
to
educate.
educate yourself, right?
And the funny thing you mentioned that because I spoke to a few persons before who, John Campbell, St. Ryan Steele. This
Yeah,
is what they always come back to. Always try to educate yourself about whatever you are interested in
yeah,
getting into. And, a lot of persons have a job and they get this benefit called 401k.
mm,
You're familiar with 401k, you might be
absolutely,
familiar. Some
yeah.
persons just see it and they're told what the administrator tells them. So in a layman term, how can 401k benefit regular
Yeah,
persons?
yeah, that's a very good question. And this is the one thing I'm glad you raised that, because if your company offers a 401k, and particularly if the company is providing a match to what you contribute, that's absolutely the first thing you should be putting your money in a 401k. So a 401k is what we refer to as a defined contribution plan,
Yes,
where individuals could put their money into each month, and it comes from your paycheck, right? So from your
yes,
paycheck, the company withholds a certain amount based on what you say. So let's say you say, I want to take 10% of my salary and put it in this 401k plan. The 401k plan is actually typically is made up of a number of different mutual funds, right? So it's what I was saying before, is that you've got these mutual funds that are made up of a multitude of stocks,
yes,
and you know, there are different variations of mutual funds that companies would offer to their employees that they could put their money towards, right?
yes,
It's good also because you get, when if you make $100 a day, as an example, or let's make
yes,
it simple, $1,000 a month, right?
yes,
And you typically would get taxed on $1,000. So let's say your tax rate is 20%, right? So you'd
yes,
pay $200 in tax. If
yes,
you now say you're gonna put $50 of you know, $100 of that thousand into the 401k, what happens to your tax is that your tax actually that you've got to get withheld goes down. So you put
yes.
$100 of the thousand, you only get taxed on $900. So you 20% of 900 is $180 versus you would
Right,
have paid
right.
$200 before. So you save
Yes, yes,
$20 on your
yes,
taxes,
yes,
right?
yes, sir. Yes,
And at the same time, you're putting in money into a savings vehicle that's going to benefit you for the long term,
for the long term.
right?
Yes, yes, yes,
And typically most companies will provide a matching contribution to what you put in.
yes.
Not to the full extent. So you know, so some companies may say if you put in 6%, they'll match up to 3%. Again,
Right, right.
you want to maximize what the company is going to match, because again, that's free money from the company for you,
Oh,
right? The
yes, of
company
course.
is
Well,
putting that money into the savings for you for your future. So you want to maximize what the company is going to put in for you, and that's a nice way. If you know, anyone that works for a company, that's a nice easy way to invest for
yes,
the future,
yes,
right? So take, you know,
yes.
everyone should take advantage of that. So I'm glad you raised that. That's a great point.
Of course, because a lot of persons, maybe we have to think always because persons are on different levels at all times, and you speak a lot about investing and your expertise, and there are children who might be watching this. So I'm trying to gear it in a way where, so for example, a parent who has two a boy and a girl,
Yeah.
maybe 12 years old, and I talked to Andel Green some while ago, and he talked about insurance and some of these investment schemes in the banks. But you might be aware of some of these investments. You talk about saving for children at an earlier age so that as they get older, it will mature.
Yeah.
so that they can have a better future. Hopefully that's what we hope for.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So and that's what I encourage is, the earlier you could start, the much better.
Yes.
And we know, these days, particularly in the U.S. Environment, college is expensive. They've got these what they call these college savings plans, where they call them the 529 plans, where you could put money into those plans for your child's future education, and again, you get a tax deduction when you contribute to those
At the end
plans.
of the,
So
yes,
so those are the things you want to take advantage. Any vehicle that you could take advantage of that helps to
yes,
lower your taxes, you want to do that, right? Because
yes.
the last thing you want is to give your money to the U.S. government, right?
Or any
I'm sure.
government.
Yeah, to any government, exactly. The last thing you want is to give your money
Yes.
to any government. We know that the governments in all over the world, listen, they don't manage their money very well, right? So that's the last thing you want to do, is
Yes.
to have your money get stuck with the U.S., but with any government, as
Yes,
you say.
yes, yes, yes.
Now,
And
now you need
notice
to
how,
make sure you
yeah,
pay your taxes, whatever your taxes
of
are. You
course,
need to you need to
of
pay,
course, of
but
course, of course.
leave it at that and no more, right? So so
You talk about that, and let's shift gears a little bit now. You have lived in many different countries
yeah,
during the span of your career, and countries that don't even speak English.
right,
And
yeah,
you know, talk a little bit about that, your experiences in these
yeah.
areas.
Yeah, so the two countries that I lived in, was Puerto Rico, Spanish speaking, and France, French speaking, and I had no speaking or fluency in those languages when I moved into those locations. Now, the also disappointedly, I left those locations without picking up any fluency in those languages. So I probably wasted a good opportunity there. But the thing is, when I went to those locations, and I think this was probably part of the reason why I never picked up the languages so much, because I went into those locations in these leadership roles. What happened was that the staff actually, reverted to talking to me in English, as opposed to me trying to communicate to, so because I was in a leadership position, they felt that they had to
Ah,
talk to me
okay,
in my
okay.
language, as opposed to trying to
Yes,
force me to
yes,
talk to
yes.
them in their language. So that's largely what happened. So I regretted not picking up the language, but it's one of those things that, despite and I'll talk, part of this is more on the cultural side of stuff. I think, I went in with a very open mindset. I didn't go in with as I went into those locations and the work that needed to get done. Even though I went in a leadership role, I didn't. I went in a very humble way, not trying to show that I knew too much, and just trying to
Yes,
make sure that the team on the ground was the one that was really, bringing forth their ideas, and stuff. And I think just culturally that worked. It really opened up. I mean, living in these different locations, the Philippines, as I mentioned, all the way across the other side of the world. It just sort of opened up my cultural awareness.
yes,
And I,
yes.
I think us Jamaicans, we could find Jamaicans in all parts of the globe.
Everywhere. Yes.
And I think that's one of the things with that sort of ingrained persona of the Jamaicans, I think that allowed me to meld and adapt to those environments that I worked in. But
Yes.
I enjoyed it greatly. Probably my best location that I would say, that I enjoyed the most was the Philippines.
Of course, it's a different culture,
Yeah,
different Spain or Spanish countries, a different
right.
culture there. Like the Philippines, Asian countries, the different culture
Yeah,
here, different from in Jamaica. So
yeah,
that gives you a new perspective. So, you know, the bar was set really high, especially from the town of Lucy, because Ruseas had that high bar. Academia was very highly looked at. And we had very high achievers, you know, from Ruseas back in the early days. So
Yeah.
when you look at you entering another country, not normal, like a lot of persons will enter these hotel programs, farm workers. What we do, we have to adapt to learn these languages and these customs of these employers. Now, you entered these countries on a different sphere. You entered in a leadership role. So you talk about you didn't have to learn to speak their language. They had to conform to, you know, to talk with you in your language. That's a spin right there. You don't very often you don't hear about that. No, that's
Yeah,
very good.
yeah. It is to a certain degree, but I actually, in hindsight, I wished it was the other way because I think I probably could have learned. I could have come away with a bit more.
Yes, yes,
The language is one, and whilst I try to immerse myself in the local environments as much as I can, as I could, there were certain things that clearly, because of the language restrictions, didn't allow me
yes.
to. But yeah, it's there are times I wish it would have been a little different, or I could have, quite frankly, I was a little bit lazy. I could have forced it as well, right? In terms of me getting into some of that uncomfortable space, particularly with the language piece, that I just got a little bit lazy, and copped
Well,
out.
I
But
mean, dealing with numbers, a lot of persons might not be aware of what it takes, the concentration, the high level of
yeah.
concentration that it takes to be an accountant, to be a person who handle numbers. Um, it takes a lot of concentration because you cannot. You are the last. The buck stops with you. You have to get it right.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
so looking at that now, we're looking at the future now because this decade coming, we're looking at cryptocurrency, Bitcoin. This next decade, I think we're heading in that direction. So what's your take on this next decade coming on the currency that we're looking at?
Yeah, yeah. It's there's an awful lot of vehicles that are coming on. You know, uh, and I agree with you. I think the landscape will continue to evolve. As the world moves on, and as people get more creative in terms of whether it's currency or investment vehicles and
Yes,
and and the like. So yeah, I listen. I think the world will continue to evolve. Clearly, um, the one thing I would say to someone is don't get into it if you're not comfortable, right? If you're not able to go through it and understand it, right, you stay away from it,
stay
right?
away from it. Yes.
Because that's where you're going to get yourself in trouble. But the whole Bitcoin stuff, cryptocurrency stuff, it's out there, but it hasn't really infiltrated deeply across the society, right? We still have the very basic currencies that we use today and all that stuff. Ultimately, will the Bitcoin and the cryptocurrency or whatever other stuff comes along, take hold? I think so. I think we'll ultimately move away from some of these exchange mechanisms that we have today
Yes,
to
yes,
to to
yes,
some of these things. But part of, I think, what's sort of holding some of these things back is one, people don't fully get them, understand them. So clearly you won't get the masses using them. And I think there's also an element of security concerns about how much people could get duped by getting into these things. So you know um, Norwin, in his technology piece, a few weeks back, talked about cyber fraud and cyber threats and all that stuff. And I
yes, he
think this
did.
is part of people. A lot of people in the world today still want to hold on to that hard currency. They want to see the dollar
Yes,
bills or the coins, right?
yes. The
And to
mattress
tell
money.
the mattress money, yeah, and to tell them to get into something else that they
Yes,
don't truly understand,
yes,
and
yes,
that you hear so many stories about how people get defrauded by getting into these things.
Yes.
It's going to take a lot of socializing across the globe to get people really comfortable with some of these things. So, will it get there? Yeah, I just think it will take some time.
Okay, good. Now, you're at Ruseas. You're at the devotion on Monday morning, and someone says, Gregory, talk to these students for a few minutes. What would you say to them?
Yeah, no, I think that's it's a good question. So the first thing I'd say is have balance in your life, right? So clearly you're at school to learn, um,
Of
but
course,
also
hopefully.
yeah, but also as young kids, right? You want to go out, kick a ball, you want to have some fun as well, right? So you want to sort of do a little bit of both, but you want to maintain a balance. You don't want to go go too much in the one way. You got to remember why are you in school, right? And the reason you're there is to get an education, because that's a foundation for your future growth and
Yes, yes,
development, right? So don't forget the purpose of
yes,
why you're in school. The other thing I'd say is you want to maintain a very inquisitive, continuous learning, continuous improvement mindset, right? So
yes,
so you don't pretend like you know everything, right? Some people
yes,
pretend that they know stuff when they really don't, because they think it may look foolish. Quite frankly,
yes,
I've part of my success has been me going into roles where I didn't know 90% of things, and part of it is just feeling comfortable to ask what people may perceive as a silly question, right? I don't care if they
yes,
perceive it as silly. I'm focused on my personal growth and development, right? So again,
absolutely.
you have to be inquisitive, be okay to ask a question that people may think is simple, and because the simplest questions, quite frankly, at times get you the most eye-opening
Yes,
insights.
yes,
So you want to allow yourself to struggle, to make mistakes as you experiment, as you
yes.
search
Very
for
interesting.
knowledge.
Very
And then the other,
interesting.
so there's the education side, and in terms of building that technical skills, but there's also what I'd say is just learning to be a good human being, right? The human
Yes,
element, of, I think, I'd say humility. So be humble, right?
yes, yes,
And I
yes.
know a lot of
You
us,
you can talk
particularly
about
our,
that.
well, the thing is, Darwin, a lot of us in our race, quite, and this, I'll say our race can be quite boastful, right?
Yes, we can.
Jamaicans are very boastful. The black
We're
race can
proud
be
people.
very,
We are
yeah.
proud
Well,
people.
that's a good way. But sometimes there is the pride leads to a lack of humility, right? So
Yes,
so
sir. Yes,
so
sir.
so I think being humble and is important. Humility is important.
Yes,
Respect for each other, right?
yes.
So respect your elders. I grew up knowing to respect
Respecting
my
the
elders.
elders. Yes, sir.
I see today, potentially some of that is being lost. To respect your
Yes,
elders,
yes, yes,
respect your others around you, and show kindness to your fellow human
yes,
beings, right? And I've always lived my life in a way that it doesn't matter who I interact with, right?
yes.
People will look at me and say that I've been successful in my career. Great, I'm still learning, I'm still growing, I'm still developing.
Yes.
But I never, regardless of how people view me, I never, when I interact with someone, whether it's the person out on the street sweeping the streets, or someone in the boardroom, I try to be as respectful as possible to whomever I deal with, right? There's a
Yes,
whole saying,
yes.
of be mindful, or treat, as you rise up,
Above
treat
the ladder, yep.
as you rise, yeah, you treat the person that you're passing, with dignity and respect, because
Yes.
it may be the same person that you're reaching out to on your,
Yes.
if you have a hard fall, right? So again, dignity and respect, and just just be a good human being, right?
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. Now, you have said so much. We had so little time. So as we are, we're wrapping up right now. Is there any last words that you might want to say to anyone, or to the community
Yeah.
at large, to Jamaicans, just about anybody who might find it necessary?
Yeah, let me and maybe I'll give a plug for the Ruseas Brosis Foundation here. So I was approached about being part of this organization, and it stemmed clearly from a bunch of guys trying, fellow the footballing community getting together and talking about how they could give back to Ruseas. And
Yes.
when Troy approached me, I really started to question, or challenging him on, do you need to set up a separate organization? Could you leverage other organizations that are out there to accomplish what it is that you're trying to accomplish?
Yeah.
But as I got into it and I interacted with a few more people, and I just saw the level of passion, the level of commitment, and most importantly, just the heart and soul in which these people talk about what they're trying to do, right? And what they're trying to
Yes.
give back to
Yes.
Ruseas in a very different way. I
Yes.
thought I
Yes.
thought that was very, very powerful. So it was a vision of an organization that could bring the resources and the skills of a
Yes.
large mass of people, like-minded people, to benefit Ruseas in numerous ways, right? Be it infrastructure,
Yes.
sports, education, mentoring. I mean, there's a bunch of things that the guys have talked about, that the guys and gals, so not just guys and
Yes.
girls, have talked
Yes.
about, that I think is tremendous. And as such, I agreed to be a part of this, doing a lot of work in the background, to formalize this foundation. So you'll see the very much the social part of it. That I saw, I'm part of the WhatsApp group with all the social media interactions and guys
Yes.
playing music and cooking and all
Yes.
that good stuff, which is a lot of fun. But there's also the piece where we need to organize ourselves in a more formal way, right? So
Yes.
so so we've in the foundation has been incorporated. We actually received very recently our tax exempt notification from the IRS. So we
Yes.
are formally recognized as a tax exempt organization in the US. There's a formal board that's in place, and it's guys that have brought in a whole range of experiences that I think will help to bring the bigger group's vision to light, right?
Yes. Very interesting. Yes.
Because as I interact with some of the guys, I see that a lot of them are doing things on their own, right? They're doing individual things
Yes.
for the benefit of
Yes.
Ruseas. So
Yes.
Lee
Yes.
Lee Lee Baga, Stuart, based over in England, as an example,
Yes.
he took me through
Yes.
all the things he's been doing for years for Ruseas. Very noble
Yes.
things, but again,
Oh
all
yes.
in a very
Yes.
quiet way. And I'm sure there's a number of
Yes.
other people out there
Yes.
doing the same, right? These are people who want to leverage the benefit of a structure,
Yes.
and the benefit of the larger resources to really make a true difference for Ruseas. So that's my
Yes.
plug for the Brosis. I think it's a fabulous organization doing a lot of,
Yes.
looking to do a lot of good things.
Yes.
So I encourage everyone to support and be a part of it in some way, because I think hopefully it will accomplish a lot for Ruseas in the
Yes.
future.
Of course. Thank you. Thank you again, Gregory. That's well said. I could not have said it better than that. And there are a lot of quiet giants who are in the background doing a lot of work. Yourself is one of them that we must say thank you for. And it's just giving back, providing a service to the institution that helped you along the way into your becoming who you are today. So I want to say thank you again for taking the time out to be with us here. And you didn't have to be here, but you did take the time out of your busy schedule. So thank you again for being a part of this Ruseas Empowerment Hour. So we look forward to talking with you again sometime soon, Gregory. Thank you again.
All right, thanks, Darwin, and truly appreciate the conversation. And as I
It's
said,
been...
the moderator stuff, that's your calling. So well done, huh?
Thank you so much. I really
All right.
appreciate that. Thank you,
Stay
sir.
well.
Yes, thanks. You as well. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, another one of our Ruseas Empowerment Hour. We have just completed this program and one of our many series. So look forward again next week for another one of our Ruseas Empowerment Hour, when we will be talking to persons of very interesting backgrounds and upbringings and disciplines. Thank you for watching, viewers and subscribers. Thank you.